The bell above the dealership door had barely stopped ringing when Marcus Webb walked in. He was wearing Carhartt work pants, the kind that had seen too many oil changes and not enough washing machines. His boots were steel-toed and scuffed beyond any reasonable polish. There was a smear of grease along his left forearm that he hadn't noticed, and probably wouldn't have cared about even if he had. His hands were thick and callous, the hands of a man who had spent decades doing things that most people only hired other people to do. His truck, a 2003 Ford F-250 with a cracked side mirror and a bumper sticker that said, God, Family, Country in that order, sat in the parking lot like a patient old dog waiting for its owner. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, in the kind of quiet that only exists before noon on a weekday, when a car dealership feels less like a place of business and more like a cathedral of chrome and ambition. The showroom floor gleamed under recessed lighting. The cars on display, a silver Mercedes S-Class, a midnight blue BMW 7 Series, a white Cadillac Escalade fresh off the truck, sat with the kind of quiet dignity that comes from being very expensive and very aware of it. Marcus walked in and looked around slowly, the way a man looks at something he's already decided he wants. He wasn't browsing. He wasn't wandering. He was choosing. 2 salespeople were on the floor. The first was Derek Paulson, 29 years old, third year at Hargrove Luxury Motors in Dallas, Texas, who had last month won the dealership's internal top producer plaque and had not stopped mentioning it. The second was Janelle Okafor, 26, 8 months in, still learning the rhythms of the place, still trying to figure out which instincts to trust. Derek saw Marcus first. He looked at the boots. He looked at the truck in the parking lot. He looked at the grease on the forearm. And then he looked back down at his phone and kept scrolling. Janelle started to move forward, but Derek put a hand out, not touching her, just a slight gesture, the kind that said, don't bother, without using actual words. Watch this, he murmured, with the casual cruelty of someone who had decided the next few minutes were going to be entertaining rather than productive. Marcus walked toward the Escalade. He ran one hand slowly along the hood, not touching the paint, just hovering above it, feeling the warmth of the metal from the showroom lights. He crouched down and looked at the wheel arch. He stood back up and looked at the profile of the vehicle, the way a man looks at a horse before deciding if it's worth the price. Then he looked toward the sales desk and waited. Nobody came. He waited another minute. He was patient about it. The patience of a man who had stood in mud at 5 a.m. waiting for equipment to arrive, who had sat in the cab of the truck for 3 hours waiting for a road to clear. A minute in a clean, air-conditioned showroom was nothing. He walked toward Derek directly. Excuse me, Marcus said. His voice was low and even, with a faint Texas accent that had been lived in rather than performed. Derek looked up from his phone with the expression of a man performing the minimum viable version of customer service. Help you? Hope so, Marcus said. I'm looking at the Escalade, the white one, and I saw you got an ESV in the lot, the extended. I'd like to compare the two, if somebody has a minute. Derek leaned back slightly in his chair. Those are premium vehicles, he said. The words were technically informational. The tone was something else entirely. I know, Marcus said. That's why I'm here. Derek glanced at the parking lot, at the F-250, back at Marcus. We also do financing, but I'll be honest with you, our approval process is pretty rigorous. Debt to income, credit score, the whole thing. It's not as simple. I don't need financing, Marcus said. A pause. I'm paying cash. Derek smiled the way people smile when they don't believe something but don't want to say so out loud. Right. Well, we're actually pretty busy right now. He gestured vaguely at the empty showroom, with some scheduled appointments coming in. If you want to leave a number, we can call you when someone's free. Marcus looked at him for a long moment, not with anger, not with embarrassment, with the calm, measuring look of a man who has seen exactly this before and has already decided what it means about the person in front of him. I'll wait, he said simply, and walked back toward the Escalade. Derek watched him go, then leaned toward Janelle and said quietly, waste of everybody's time. Guys like that come in here, kick the tires, dream a little, and leave. I've seen it 100 times. Janelle said nothing. She watched Marcus standing next to the Escalade again, and something about the way he stood The total absence of self-consciousness, the complete comfort in his own skin, made her uncertain that Derek was right. Marcus stood by the Escalade for another 10 minutes. He wasn't performing patience anymore. He was simply existing in the showroom with the quiet ease of a man who had nowhere more important to be and nothing more urgent to prove. Then his phone rang. He pulled out an older iPhone, the screen slightly cracked in one corner, and answered it. "Yeah," he said. Then, after a pause, "How much are they short?" Another pause, longer this time. "Tell them we'll cover the gap. Just make sure the deed transfer goes through before Friday or the whole thing falls apart." A pause. "No, the other property too. Both of them. Listen, I'm buying a car right now. I'll call you back in an hour." He hung up. Janelle had drifted closer, not eavesdropping deliberately, but close enough that she heard every word. She looked at Derek. Derek had his head down, still on his phone, still not paying attention. She walked over to Marcus. "Hi," she said. "I'm Janelle. I'm sorry you've been waiting. Can I show you the Escalade?" Marcus looked at her, and something in his face shifted. Not warmth exactly, but the recognition of a decent gesture. "Appreciate it," he said. "Yes." For the next 20 minutes, Janelle showed him both Escalades, the Standard and the ESV, with genuine professionalism. She knew her product. She answered his questions without condescension and without the fake brightness that salespeople sometimes confuse with enthusiasm. Marcus asked good questions, specific ones, about tow ratings, about the third row configuration, about the difference in turning radius between the two models, about whether the technology package could be added to either trim or only the higher one. These were not the questions of a man who was dreaming. These were the questions of a man who had already decided and was confirming the details. "Which one are you leaning toward?" Janelle asked. "Both," Marcus said. She blinked. "Both." "My wife wants a ESV. She's been on me about it for 2 years. The corner of his mouth moved, almost a smile. "I figure if I show up with a Standard, I'll never hear the end of it. But I want the other one for the ranch. We run supplies out to 3 different properties, and extended cargo space makes sense. So, both." Janelle stared at him for just a moment. Not rudely, just recalibrating. "Let me get some numbers together for you." "Please," Marcus said. It was when Janelle pulled up Marcus's name in the system to begin the purchase process that things got very quiet at the sales desk. The system flagged him immediately, not because of anything negative, because of the account note that had been placed there 14 months ago by the dealership's owner, Robert Hargrove, in large, unmistakable letters. "VIP client, Marcus Webb, Webb Land and Transport LLC, do not keep waiting." Janelle read it twice. Then she looked up at Derek, who had finally wandered over now that it looked like an actual sale was happening. "Derek," she said carefully, "did you know who this is?" Derek glanced at the screen, and the color drained from his face with the efficiency of a bathtub unplugged. Marcus Webb, Webb Land and Transport LLC, 47 years old, owner and founder of one of the largest private trucking and landholding operations in Central and West Texas. 14 ranches across 3 counties totaling more than 80,000 acres. Fleet contracts with 4 major agricultural corporations. Net worth, according to Forbes' regional wealth profile that Janelle would look up on her phone 3 minutes later while pretending to get paperwork, conservatively estimated at $340 million. He had bought 6 vehicles from this dealership in the past 4 years. Always cash, always without fanfare, always in work clothes, because Marcus Webb had never in his adult life confused what he wore with who he was. He was also, Janelle would discover moments later, the single largest commercial client of the property management company that managed the building Hargrove Luxury Motors operated out of. The lease that was up for renewal in 11 days. Derek stood very still. Marcus was sitting calmly in a chair by the window, looking at something on his phone, completely unbothered, the way a man is unbothered when the world has spent so long underestimating him that it has simply stopped being surprising. Derek walked over. The confidence that had occupied his face all morning had quietly packed its bags and left. "Mr. Webb," he said, "I want to apologize for the wait earlier. I should have—" "You're fine?" Marcus said, without looking up from his phone. "I just want you to know that if there's anything I can do to make this process." "Janelle's taking care of it," Marcus said. This time he did look up, and his eyes were calm and clear and absolutely direct. "She helped me. She'll get the commission." Derek opened his mouth, closed it. "Both of them," Marcus added. "The full commission on both vehicles." The total purchase that Tuesday morning came to $184,000. 2 Cadillac Escalades fully loaded with every available package, paid in full by electronic transfer that cleared within the hour. Janelle made $4,600 in commission before noon on a Tuesday. Derek made nothing. But the commission wasn't the end of the story. It was barely the middle. 3 days later, Robert Hargrove, the owner of Hargrove Luxury Motors, received a call from his property management office. The lease renewal for the dealership's building was on the table. Standard renewal, 2-year extension, same terms, except Marcus Webb, through his property management company, had flagged a renewal for personal review, which he had never done before in 4 years of renting to them. Hargrove called Marcus directly, confused and slightly nervous. Marcus answered on the second ring. "Marcus," Hargrove said, "I heard you were in the showroom last week. Everything okay? I hope you were taken care of." "One of your people took good care of me," Marcus said. "The young woman, Janelle." A pause. Good, I'm glad." "The other one, the man who was there when I walked in, he told me you were busy with appointments." Marcus's voice was even, almost gentle. "The place was empty, Robert. I counted 3 other customers come in while I was waiting." He didn't approach any of them either. Silence on the line. "I'm not calling about the lease," Marcus continued. "The lease is fine. I'm calling because I like your dealership, and I've sent 7 people your way in the last 2 years. I'd like to keep doing that. But I need to know that when my friends walk in, some of them don't dress any better than I do. They're going to be treated like human beings, whether they buy something or not." Hargrove said quietly, "I understand, Marcus. That won't happen again." "Good," Marcus said, and that was the end of the call. Derek Paulson was placed on a formal performance review the following Monday, not for losing a sale. Hargrove wasn't that petty about money, but for what the internal review noted as conduct unbefitting a client-facing role, including failure to greet customers and behavior unbecoming of the dealership's stated values. He lasted another 6 weeks before finding employment elsewhere. 2 months after that Tuesday, Janelle Okafor received a letter, not an email, an actual letter on plain cream-colored stationery, handwritten in the careful penmanship of a man who had grown up in a time when handwriting meant something. It read, "Miss Okafor, you treated a stranger with basic dignity when it cost you nothing and when the easier thing was to follow someone else's lead and ignore him. That's rarer than it should be. I recommended your name to 3 colleagues who are in the market for vehicles in the next 6 months. Tell Robert you have my personal referral. M. Webb." Those 3 referrals came in over the next 4 months. All 3 purchased vehicles. All 3 paid cash or near cash. Janelle's total commission from Marcus Webb's direct and referred business in her first year at Hargrove Luxury Motors came to just over $31,000. She was named the dealership's top producer by February. She kept the letter in her desk drawer, not as a reminder of the money, but as a reminder of the moment that morning when she had a choice: follow Derek's lead or trust her own instincts. And she had chosen her instincts. Here is the part of the story that most people never think about. Marcus Webb drove home that Tuesday afternoon in his cracked mirror F-250, with the 2 Escalades being delivered by the dealership the following morning. He stopped at a gas station on the way, pumped his own gas, bought a bottle of water and a bag of beef jerky, chatted briefly with the cashier about the weather, and continued home. He did not replay the morning with satisfaction. He did not think about Derek Paulson with anger or with triumph. He had encountered thousands of Derek Paulsons in his life, men who looked at the surface of the thing and believed they had seen all of it. They were not interesting to him. They were not worth the energy of contempt. What he did think about briefly, as he turned off the highway onto gravel road that led to the main ranch house, was his father, Earl Webb, had worked as a ranch hand for 22 years for a man who never once invited him to sit at the same table. Earl Webb had worn the same kind of worn-out boots and oil-stained pants that Marcus was wearing today. He had driven a truck that made Marcus's F-250 look luxurious. He had died with $14,000 in savings and a chest full of dignity that nobody had ever been able to take from him because he had never, not once, given anyone permission to define his worth. Marcus had learned two things from his father. The first, work is honest and honest work makes a man. The second, the moment you start dressing up your outside to change what people think of your inside, you've already lost something that's very hard to get back. He parked the truck. He went inside. He washed the grease off his forearm. He sat down with his wife, Clara, and told her the Escalade was coming tomorrow. The ESV, the one she wanted, fully loaded, and she shook her head at him with particular affectionate exasperation of a woman who has been married to the same man for 24 years and still can't quite believe him. "You could have called ahead," she said. "I know," he said. "You could have worn something nicer." "I know that too." She looked at him. He looked back at her. And they both smiled, because they both knew he would do exactly the same thing next time, and the time after that for the rest of his life. Because Marcus Webb had never needed the world to see who he was before he walked into a room. He had only ever needed to know it himself. There's a version of this story where Marcus Webb is the punchline and Derek Paulson is the lesson. But that's too simple. The real lesson isn't about what happens to people who judge, though that part matters. The real lesson is about what happens to people who don't. Janelle Okafor walked into that dealership 8 months earlier as a newcomer trying to find her footing. She left that Tuesday with the most important sale of her career. Not because she was the best salesperson in the room, but because she was the most human one. She saw a man waiting, and she simply walked over. That's all she did. She walked over. How many times a day do we all have a chance to walk over and choose not to? How many Marcus Webbs have we sent back to their trucks, back to their lives, back to places where someone else will treat them like a person? And how many Janelle moments have we left on the table because Derek's voice was louder than our own instincts? The clothes don't tell you the story. The shoes don't tell you the story. The truck in the parking lot doesn't tell you the story. The only way to know someone's story is to be the kind of person who is willing to walk over and find out. True worth is never written on the outside. It never has been. If the story moved you, if it made you think about the last time you made an assumption about someone based on how they looked, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone is standing in a showroom right now, waiting, and the only question is whether the next person who walks toward them is a Derek or Janelle. Be the Janelle. Don't forget to subscribe.